We begin with, right now, a case before the U.S. Supreme Court that has huge implications for President Trump's power and that of presidents to come. The justices are hearing arguments at the moment in a lawsuit challenging Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship. That order applies to children who were born in the United States to illegal immigrant parents. The larger issue at hand is whether federal judges have unrestrained power to issue nationwide blocks on presidential actions, something that you know is happening against President Trump right now. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. The president posted ahead of the arguments today. Big case today in the Supreme Court. Birthright citizenship was not meant for people taking vacations to become permanent citizens of the United States of America and bringing their families with them, all the time laughing at the quote-unquote suckers that we are. Here are some of those arguments from just moments ago.
And you are claiming that not just the Supreme Court, that both the Supreme Court and no lower court can stop an executive from universally from violating that holding, those holdings by this court.
We are not claiming that because we're conceding that there could be in an appropriate case.
Only a class, only
Can
by
I
a
hear
class.
can I hear the rest of his answer?
Well, testy there. The court's decision could decide the fate of many of the president's executive orders and actions now. Federal judges have hit the president's agenda with 17 nationwide injunctions in fewer than 5 months. That's far more than any other recent presidents at this point. Former federal prosecutor Trey Gowdy.
Your view of nationwide injunctions should not ebb and flow with who is in the White House. We need one standard. It literally makes no sense that one judge who can win with 50 votes and the vice president should be able to thwart or undo an executive agenda.
Justice correspondent David Spunt is outside the U.S. Supreme Court. David.
Hi, Harris. A lot of back and forth going on in the court right now. Arguments going on for about an hour. We expect them definitely at least another hour. Always hard to cut those sound bites for TV because they are so thoughtful with the back and the forth on any case, but especially this case. Listen, as you've been mentioning to the viewers, on paper, this case is about birthright citizenship, but the forefront of the argument is about these nationwide injunctions or nationwide pauses. Let's take a live look outside the Supreme Court now, where people have been protesting the president's executive order retooling or ending birthright citizenship as it's stated in the 14th Amendment. But this is talking about those temporary orders where a judge, Harris, let's say in Portland, Maine, can issue a policy that affects someone living in Portland, Oregon. The DOJ says judges are increasingly abusing power by being able to do so. Critics are arguing the judiciary is a third co-equal branch of government and judges have every right to issue a nationwide injunction. Right now, judges in Massachusetts, Maryland, and Washington State have put a pause on this birthright citizenship executive order, one the president signed on his first day in office. Critics say the president, without Congress, cannot simply just change the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which states all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. The DOJ looking at that and subject to the jurisdiction whereof. They are hanging their hat on that point. As far as when we could get some sort of decision from the justices, we expect something in the next few weeks, unlike the end of June, because this is an application to the court. But the bottom line, whatever the justices decide, as you'll talk about with your next guest, it's going to have effects on basically all of President Trump's executive orders that are tied up in the courts. And if it's a victory for him, it may push those executive orders across the finish line in many cases. Harris?
Well, the stakes are high. David Spunt, thank you very much for watching it closely. We may come back if the news warrants. A couple of pieces now breaking down the critical case. The Wall Street Journal editorial board writes, when a legal split gets serious, the high court accepts a case to put things back on the level. That's the theory, anyway. What happens in practice, at least lately, is that the political faction out of power challenges the government's every move in a friendly legal venue. The worry about completely ruling out universal injunctions is whether that would enable abuses of executive power. All of that a quote. Axios puts it this way. There's a good faith, non-ideological argument that courts are handing down too many injunctions. There are more than 600 district court judges in the U.S. When all of them have the power to freeze a presidential policy, lawsuits can grind the presidency to a halt more easily than ever before. Well, no doubt that's what Democrats would love at this point. Jonathan Turley, Fox News contributor and George Washington University law professor. So, Jonathan, let's just start, before we get too big umbrella with this, let's start with President Trump and what the road ahead could look like.
Well, this is key to his ability to carry out the promises he made during his campaign. These suits are well coordinated. The whole point here is that if you can keep all these policies in court, it won't be until 3 years into his term that he could ever hope to actually carry out some of these policies. He'd have probably less than a year to make any type of inroads. And the biggest problem facing him and his predecessors, because both Democratic and Republican presidents have objected, is that you basically have to run the table. You have to win potentially, 677 to 0, because any district court judge could stop you with a national or universal injunction. And even Justice Kagan, during the Biden administration, objected to that and said that, in that case, conservative groups are form shopping and are basically handcuffing the administration, and that's crazy.
But isn't that, in short, pushing against a public who elected a president based on the promises to turn very specific issues around? And if you get too heavy-handed with the injunctions, like in this case, none other that we've ever seen at this point in his presidency, the high number of them, aren't you trying to negate the vote? Isn't that like post-election interference, if that could even be a thing? It seems like it thwarts the voters.
Well, that's an argument being made by many critics. But inside the court, the Solicitor General is saying today that you can get a national or universal injunction, just not this way. That is, if you have a class, a group of people that are across the country that are being mistreated, you can file what's called a class action under a rule called Rule 23. And the Trump administration is saying, we're not objecting to that. We're not objecting that if you've got a national class, you can get a national order. What we're objecting to is when, small numbers of parties go into a favored district in California or New York and then bind the entire country, and most importantly, the entire executive branch.
So at the end of the day, however this goes, either the executive branch gets the power in this case, or the judiciary branch gets the power. It seems like it's that simplistic. Maybe not.
Well, you see that tension in the argument today. Yeah. This has been a pretty hot argument. Chief Justice Roberts doesn't ordinarily talk over Justice Sotomayor and said, will you please let us hear his answer? Mm-hmm. And by the way, Justice Sotomayor didn't yield. She continued to talk. She was right out of the gates very early. And clearly that was not going over well with some of the justices who wanted to hear what the Solicitor General has to say. But Justice Sotomayor was very, very active. The interesting thing so far is Justice Kagan, because she sort of painted herself in a corner in her interview at Northwestern Law School when, during the Biden administration, she said, these injunctions really are crazy. Today, she was suggesting, well, if we think this order is clearly unconstitutional, does that change the dynamic for us? So it seemed like she was trying to reframe it a bit in terms of how they would approach this.
All right. Judge is at the heart of this, too, but in a different way. Protests outside a Milwaukee, Wisconsin courtroom this morning. A county judge there has now become the defendant. And some of the crowd that you see there is upset over the judge's arrest. Others are protesting the actions of federal immigration agents, or ICE. Judge Hannah Dugan has pleaded not guilty to charges of helping an illegal alien escape federal authorities. Her attorneys filed to dismiss the case entirely. They argue she is protected by judicial immunity. Her trial is set to start in late July and expected to last about a week. Judge Dugan is facing charges of obstructing a U.S. agency and concealing an individual to prevent an arrest. The penalty includes up to 6 years in prison and fines up to $350,000. Jonathan, which way do you see this one going? And who's got the stronger argument at this point?
Well, she has a very able team, including former Solicitor General Paul Clement. And they are arguing that this should be dismissed because she has judicial immunity. Ironically, she's citing the last case involving President Trump on presidential immunity and saying, look, her motivations don't matter. She was acting as a judge. I don't see that. I don't see how you can argue that, because it raises the question, well, what else could she do? Could she have redirected or misled court staff? Could she have hidden this person in her office for a day? I mean, at what point does she stop acting as a judge? Right. In this case, the federal officers wanted to arrest him in the hallway. So it's unclear how she can claim that what she did was maintaining order in her courtroom. They were waiting until after the court was over, the session was over, and they had cooperated with her, including going to the chief judge, who, by the way, told them, of course you can arrest him in the hallway.
Look, Judge Dugan also, I mean, if you just look at it plainly here, could create a slippery slope as well. I mean, all these cases, it seems like, where these judges are doing what they want to do, they're trying to catch fire with what you said. You know, can you get all of the judges to agree? And if you can, maybe you can stop Trump. Your last quick thought.
Well, I think there is this widening gap between the judiciary, both state and federal, and the Trump administration. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Supreme Court took the injunction case in this irregular way. This is a pretty rare occasion for them to accept an oral argument in a case like this. I think they do want to bring clarity, but if the oral argument today in the Supreme Court's any indication, there's more heat than light so far.
All right, Jonathan Turley, more heat than light. I like that. I'll use that. I'll quote you. Thank you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.